Every now and then I get to do a video to where I get to kind of break down both sides of an argument. And on tonight's video, we're going to talk about why P. Will is probably never going to hit the Kawhi Leonard comparisons or even star status and why that's still okay. We're going to get into all that and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another late night edition of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. And hey, if you want to follow the show, you can do so at Bulls Central Pod. If you want to follow me, you can do so at CEO Haize. Let me get the formalities out the way. But let's get into the topic that I want to have for tonight. And so this really stems from a couple of things. And so it's all built around P. Will, right? P. Will, who was drafted number 4 overall by the Chicago Bulls, the first draft selection by AK and Mark Eversley, the new regime for the Chicago Bulls. And P. Will has become a very polarizing topic when it comes to Bulls fandom. You have, on one hand, the Bulls fans that are already ready to label P. Will a bust, even though he's just got old enough to even get a drink of alcohol just recently. He's about to turn 22 in about a month. And then you have the Bulls fans that say, hey, listen, it's either the position, it's the fact that it's DeMar, it's a fact of a lot of things. And while I've always said it kind of sits somewhere in the middle, right? There is a situation in which you can look at the position that P. Will came into. He came into a situation which not normal 4th overall picks come into, right? Yes, the Bulls weren't, really doing anything special his rookie season, but they then traded for Nikola Vucevic in the middle of that season and were absolutely trying to make a move to get to the playoffs. And a lot of 4th overall picks don't come into that situation. And to highlight that, I'm going to talk about this, right? Patrick Williams, in his first year in the NBA, averaged only 7.4 shots per game. Now, again, some of that is on mentality. Some of it is on the fact that he just has not gotten things run for him. And to kind of highlight that, I want to look at the 2 fourth overall picks taken before him and the 2 4th overall picks taken after him. When you look at the 2 taken before him, you have DeAndre Hunter with the Atlanta Hawks, who got almost 11 shots per game in his rookie year. Then you look at Jaren Jackson Jr. as well, who got, again, almost 11 shots per game his rookie year. Then you look at the 2 number 4 overall picks that came after Patrick Williams. And that, of course, is Scotty Barnes, who came into almost 13 shots per game in his career. And then you got Keegan Murray, who came into basically 10 shots per game for his career. The fact of the matter is that Patrick Williams has not gotten the opportunities that a lot of 4th overall picks to get just to make mistakes, to learn from their own mistakes. He came in a role that really his defense was kind of the first highlight on. That team was still trying to figure out things, whether it be with Lauri Markkanen or whatever else, getting in Nikola Vucevic, moving so many pieces at that trade deadline. His role completely changed there again, right? And this is not to excuse it. When you look at Patrick Williams and his draft, a lot of people, of course, go to Tyrese Halliburton, who was drafted after him and that has just blossomed into this near star status, right? I'm not going to say superstars. I think there are only a couple of superstars in the NBA, handful, I should say. But, of course, Tyrese Halliburton's there. Then you also look at players like Tyrese Maxey, who was also there and who some people would say is absolutely several notches above Patrick Williams right now. And, yes, that's always going to be a thing, right? You look at number 4 overall selection, and a lot of people say, hey, that number 4th overall, that guy needs to turn into a star, right? And then, of course, we live in a microwave mindset mentality that if it doesn't happen immediately, we're so quick to label players. Anybody labeling Patrick Williams a bust is it's silly, right? And yes, and that's kind of the title of the video. Patrick Williams is probably not going to ever turn into a superstar level player, maybe even a star level player, right? And that's still okay. I know a lot of Bulls fans are going to immediately get to typing and say, what are you talking about, Haize? He was 4th overall. He was this, he was that, he was that. When you draft a player, of course, you're drafting on potential, right? And the potential that you see in it. Some of that potential is going to hit, some of it's not. Patrick Williams has already showed himself to be a solid 3-and-D player in the NBA. When you look at his last 2 seasons, hitting 3-pointers at a 51% clip, albeit that was his second year, only taking 1.7 per game, doubling that The following season, last year, taking 3.5 3-pointers per game and hitting that at a 41% clip. He's a 41% three-point shooter for his career. And at the bare minimum, if Patrick Williams, who again can play for, contrary to what some people will tell you, if that's what Patrick Williams turns into, with hopefully a little bit more volume and a little bit more consistency, that's still an extremely solid, and he's going to have a role for years and years to come. And for the people who also blame the lack of development, like I said, we're going to talk about this from both sides. The people that blame the lack of development from P. Will because he's playing with DeMar, because he's playing with Zach, because he's playing with Vooch, there's a little bit to that, of course, right? When you're playing with players that have such gravity and take so many shots per game, of course, there's only so much. Patrick Williams is a fourth option in the NBA. And at sometimes he's not even a fourth option in the offense. Let's be clear there, right? Especially when, he's just not. And so you can only expect so much growth and development from a player that is averaging 7.7 shots per game in his NBA career. Again, yes, some of that is absolutely on Patrick Williams' mentality, which needs to improve, right? We need Patrick Williams to be more aggressive. I talked about it on today's daily episode. The 2.7 drives per game and 72, I think it was, percent of his shots being assisted is not going to cut it. But the fact of the matter is just this. Even if Patrick Williams does not turn into a star, right, and does not live up to the expectations that some people have for fourth overall picks, and I'm not saying those expectations are wrong, that does not mean that Patrick Williams still can't turn into a damn good, solid player in the NBA. And I know people are going to say, well, he's a role player. You don't want to – at the end of the day, you still need role players. And as long as he's paid adequately to that, that's just what his role is going to be. Now, Patrick Williams, a decision does have to be made on his extension, which kind of is drummed a lot of this up. A lot's been made of the fact that Patrick Williams can be offered a contract extension upwards of $95 million, right? And he has not lived up to a contract like that, even with contracts really kind of ballooning in the NBA. The fact of the matter still remains is that Patrick Williams still can turn into a hell of a player. Yes, a lot of that is on him to unlock some of that mentality, and a lot of it is also on the coaching staff to put him in better situations. I always go to this, and not to use the Kawhi comparisons, because those Kawhi comparisons for Patrick Williams, he's not going to hit that. This is very rare, a very slight chance that he'll ever hit that. But Kawhi Leonard also came in pretty timid as far as shooting the ball. But Greg Popovich, being a great coach, described it as building blocks. You add something to his game, you see how he does on that, then you add something else. We have not seen that with Patrick Williams, and some could say, hey, Patrick Williams hasn't shown the right to get that either. Coming into this season, Patrick Williams has to unlock something within him. Seeing all the pro-ams and the open courts and shooting on Evan Mobley, all that is cool, fine and dandy, great. But until it's done at the NBA level, we can only take that with so much grain of salt because, listen, we need more from Patrick Williams. This is not to excuse where Patrick Williams is right now either. But this is to say that Patrick Williams can still not turn into a star. This is the contrast, right? We either have the people who want to label Patrick Williams a bust, and then we have the people that want to still say, well, Patrick Williams can turn into a star. The truth is probably going to be somewhere in the middle. And in the middle is fine as long as he's consistent in what he does, right? And there could be something to Patrick Williams' game that gets unlocked with a larger role thrown on him. Can absolutely agree with that. But ultimately, it comes down to this when it comes to Patrick Williams. Whatever he's going to turn into, whatever he's ultimately going to be it consistent and be it aggressively and be it with a level of confidence. P. Will is 21 years old, turning 22 in exactly 30 days of this dropping. And yes, he's going into his fourth season in the NBA, a time in which people expect leaps from players, and it's not wrong to expect that leap. But with the role that Patrick Williams is set to have on this team, and even though, Billy Donovan has talked about he wants to see Patrick Williams not settle for so many mid-range jumpers and things like that, we all want to see it. But sometimes it takes time. And the fact is this, and I know this is not something a lot of Bulls fans are going to want to hear, there are still players coming into the league that are older than Patrick Williams when they're drafted. And those players still get time to develop. Patrick Williams is probably, I'm going to say this, I'm willing to say there's a 95% chance, unless a great deal opens itself up, that Patrick Williams is going to get a second contract with the Chicago Bulls. And it's very possible we still don't get a consistent version of Patrick Williams until then. Or that's not to, and some will say we've already fairly got a consistent version of Patrick, the least scored on player in the NBA last season. Which, yeah, it's not a stat that means he's the best defender or anything like that, but there is something to be said about that. There are players with way less possessions and time on the court that got scored on more than Patrick Williams last season. That is something else to build on. And as we keep trying to build these young players, and hopefully now with the Chicago Bulls having a head of player development, maybe we'll see. But this is a year, as is basically every year going forward with Patrick Williams, that we need to see more, right? We do need to see more. And we end up seeing what, if we get that more from him, and if something finally lights that fire under Patrick Williams, and I know so many people are going to make the, well, he never started in college, he never did this, he never did that. All that is fine and dandy. That does not dictate what a player can be in the NBA. It doesn't. We can talk about the 3, the 4, the all this. All that shit doesn't matter. The position. You can put Patrick Williams at the 3, at the 4. God damn it, you can put him at the 1, 2, and 5 at that matter until Patrick Williams unlocks something in his head and until he starts getting more aggressive and more consistent and unlocks a little bit of that dog in him. It doesn't matter where you line Patrick Williams up at. So everybody making a big deal about the position, that's not it. Patrick Williams is sitting in a place between, he's caught in a rock and a hard place. The rock being his head because he needs to unlock and crack something open in that head. Yeah, I think that's what I want to say there. And then a coaching staff that has not highlighted the development of their young players. And between those two places, the sweet spot between those two is where we may get the best version of Patrick Williams. Let me know what you guys think on all that down below. Make sure you're following the show at Bull Central Pod. You can also send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullcentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, you can leave a text message and our voicemail. The number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related because of you guys. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See red if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.